Welcome, everyone. I'm Madeline DiDono, President and CEO of the Geena Davis Institute on Gender in Media. With me is our esteemed ASL interpreters, Joe Brulette and Ashley McHenry. Please remember to pin their video if you would like to keep them on screen throughout the entire event. And if you would like to see the closed captioning, please make sure to turn that on at the bottom of your screen. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that in Los Angeles, we are currently on the traditional lands of the Chumash peoples. I want to recognize that we are all connected with one another and that the ground beneath my feet is historically the home of Indigenous peoples. We want to thank our partners at Next 50 and the Corona International Film Festival. Hey, y'all, hopefully next year we'll be together. I want to also introduce our team who will be working backstage, managing our live chat, Jasmine Barad, Senior Director of Events, and Lisa Emery, Director of Digital Media. Feel free to post your questions throughout the event. Use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen and we will get to it. So, to quote Angela Bassett, I love my age. I'm old enough to know better, young enough not to care, and experienced enough not to do it right. And although the topic of ageism in entertainment is nothing new, we hope to shed new light on how entertainment is reinforcing negative tropes and stereotypes. And we want to inspire all of you as business leaders and content creators to do better. So to kick us off, please welcome our founder, our chair, two-time Academy Award-winning actor, Geena Davis.
Thank you, Madeline. Thank you. And thanks to our members and partners and colleagues for joining us here virtually today. And hello, everyone over at the Coronado International Film Festival. We are so thrilled to have all of you with us today. And we're excited to have this opportunity to present the findings from our latest research report, Women Over 50, the right to be seen on screen. This research was made possible because of the generous support of the Next 50 initiative. So thank you, Chandra, and the entire, and the entire Next 50 team. Thank you and enjoy the program. Back to you, Madeline.
Thank you so much, Geena. And as we said, none of this would have been possible without the support of Chandra Matthews and Next 50, which is a private foundation dedicated to funding mission-driven initiatives that improve the lives of older adults population and their caregivers. So without further ado, Chandra, we thank you and we welcome you.
Oh, Madeline, thank you so much for the invitation to this program and the opportunity to speak. I gotta say, first and foremost, it's a little surreal to be speaking right after Geena Davis, but here I am. As Madeline said, my name is Chandra Matthews, and I'm the Director of Programs at Next 50 Initiative. I have the great honor of serving as the Program Officer for this project. For those unaware, and as Madeline said, Next 50 Initiative is a Colorado-based private foundation dedicated to funding initiatives that improve the lives of older adults and their caregivers. Our mission is to promote independence and dignity for the aging population by encouraging and supporting innovative, affordable, and coordinated services and initiatives, including those focused on the needs of low and moderate income individuals and individuals with physical, cognitive, and/or behavioral disability. Next 50 Initiative's vision is to be a foundation that challenges the way people think about aging. And our goal is that the lives of older adults will be enhanced through the projects that we fund. The work being done by the Geena Davis Institute in examining if and how women aged 50 and over are visible and portrayed in entertainment is right in line with our mission and vision. So many of our perceptions are formed by what we see and hear on our television screens and in the movies we watch. This important work has the opportunity to be a catalyst for change, reducing negative stereotypes of older adults and shifting how people think and feel about aging. Next 50 Initiative is honored to support this work, and I'm excited to hear the results of your research today.
Thank you so much, Chandra, and hopefully this is just the beginning of our partnership. So we're really, really excited to present this new study, and I would like to welcome Michelle Meyer, who is our Senior Director of Research and Methodologies. And just a little bit on Michelle. She is a mixed methods social scientist who specializes in the representation of marginalized groups in new, social, and entertainment media. She is a PhD candidate at the Hussman School of Journalism and Media at UNC Chapel Hill, and her dissertation centers on the experiences of LGBTQIA and online video creators. She also holds an MA in Media Studies from Newhouse School at Syracuse University and a BA in Culture and Communication from Ithaca College. Welcome, Michelle, and take it away.
Thank you so much. So I am going to share my screen so we can take a look at our report. We have all heard the horror stories of actors aging out of their successes, and this report looks into that a little bit more deeply. In media, we know already that ageism is a big problem. We know that the average earnings of female actors increase until about the age of 34 and then decrease rapidly after that, whereas male actors don't peak until 51 and they stabilize. They don't lose money after that. But beyond that, we know that media impacts how we see ourselves and how we see the world around us. And as it relates to aging, it actually has pretty profound effects on both of those things. Negative stereotypes about older adults more broadly can influence how we think about aging and really helps set expectations about what's possible for us and what's appropriate for us as we age. And numerous studies have shown that that long-term exposure to this messaging can affect individuals' cognition, longevity, well-being, and overall psychological and physical health. So the way that people over the age of 50 are presented in media is not a small matter by any stretch of the imagination. So in our effort to investigate how they are represented, we conducted 2 simultaneous studies. First, a survey, which was a nationally representative opt-in survey of about 1,500 US adults administered from September 9th to September 20th, 2021. And we focused on both adults over the age of 50 and a smaller percentage of adults under the age of 50. Alongside that, we conducted a content analysis of the top grossing domestic films and most popular broadcast and streaming shows from 2010 to 2020. So we did the top 10 per year for each of those 3 platforms. I'm going to start with the survey results. Overall, respondents find depictions of adults 50 plus in film and television to be inaccurate, stereotypical, and not representative of their actual lives. As you can see on this chart here, when we asked 18 to 49-year-olds how satisfied they are with depictions of their own age, health, finances, and occupations, they were on average more satisfied than those of people over the age of 50. Beyond that, 75% of women over the age of 50 wish they saw more adults who are like them in film and television. We asked respondents to tell us in their own words what is different about their own lives versus what they see in film and television. And we found 4 major themes in those findings. The first is physical aging. Characters on screen who are over 50 plus are either shown as incredibly frail or, on the other side of things, way too in shape for their age. And this, we posit, is related to the popularity of franchise films and reboots in which characters who were cast when they were younger have now aged into being over 50 plus. And so they are shown as action heroes. Relationships, media don't show very many happy marriages that last a long time, and our respondents felt that that was not necessarily in alignment with their experiences, and also that they have much more active social lives than they see on screen. One of the biggest responses was finances. Many, many people talked about how the realities of financial struggles are overlooked in film and television, and how many people are struggling with healthcare, the ability to retire, and that the people that we see on screen are generally very, very affluent. And finally, we had very mixed reactions to social change. Some people felt that they were depicted on screen as far too backwards thinking, and that in reality, they loved that representation was improving and that people from marginalized groups get more attention than they once did. Other people preferred things the way that they were and expressed frustration that things are not the way they once were on film and television. Beyond that, we conducted a content analysis of all of the film and television that I discussed before. And we find that 50+ characters make up less than 25% of all characters on screen. And characters on screen who are 50+ are predominantly straight white men. As you can see in these graphs here, typically we have better representation on streaming platforms than we do in film and broadcast television. And typically we see some improvement over time, but none of those things are completely standard across the board. Characters who are 50+ are professionally successful. They're shown working in positions of authority more often than those under 49, and they're actually shown doing work. However, about half of the time, they're shown strictly in occupations that are related to power, that are very masculine: law enforcement, crime, military, government, and of course, superheroes. Beyond that, they're also erased romantically. Characters 49 and under were more than 3 times as likely to have a romantic storyline than those over 50. And older characters were also less likely to be shown being affectionate or intimate. Characters over 50 are also much more likely to be shown as villains than those under. About almost 60% of films and over 40% of television shows had at least one villain over the age of 50, whereas they are more likely to be rescued than to be the rescuer. So much less likely to be your hero than their younger counterparts. We looked at different types of stereotypes and ageism, and we found that over 75% of films and over 67% of television shows had at least one character who was frail, frugal, creepy, lonely, or a burden, which we had identified previously as the most common stereotypes that people had discussed before. We also found that ageist characters were written to be a punchline. So by that I mean that there were characters included in the stories solely for the purpose of being a joke about their age. Sometimes those were prominent characters who did have stories and who were part of the main storyline, but were constantly referred back to for being old or decrepit or that being a joke. And sometimes it was a character that was just added for the sake of being a punchline, a non-speaking character who was just there to be walking too slowly or be undesirable. Finally, about a third, between a quarter and a third of characters over 50+ had no storyline of their own and were only presented in the story to serve the needs of somebody under the age of 50. 93.3% is the number of leading film roles for characters over 50+ that went to men. So there are already not a ton of opportunities for characters over the age of 50. There are even fewer for women. Male characters are more likely to be shown working, successful, intimate, and be both heroes and villains, whereas female characters are much more likely to be in romantic storylines, be affectionate, and have at least one stereotypical trait. So our suggestions are to challenge expectations, consider women, especially women of color, for some of these more male-dominated occupations, if those are the stories that are going to be told, increase diversity, resist the punchline, really avoid hiring that older background actor whose point for being there is to be the joke, and think twice before making someone's sexuality or lifestyle a joke simply because they are older. Finally, we ask that people watch their language and consider how all characters talk about age, even when older characters are not around, like men calling each other grandma as an insult, or people talking about how old they are. And finally, that they avoid extremes. As we said earlier, older characters tend to either be very frail or unnaturally strong, and we recommend that we show the real life, the dynamic ups, downs, aches, pains, but also joy that people over the age of 50 experience. And with that, Madeline, I will hand it back to you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And I know all of you are wondering, where can I see this report? The report will be on our website, which I'm sure Lisa posted, www.cjane later today. With that, I mean, just the findings, I mean, just that women 50 plus are just relegated to minor, roles is kind of mind numbing. And I would like to now ask all of our esteemed panelists to pop on, and I will introduce you in no particular order, but I would love to welcome Lisa Bruce, who is a two-time Oscar nominated and BAFTA award-winning film and TV producer. And you may know some of her wonderful films, Theory of Everything and The Darkest Hours, some of my favorites. Anna Chi, who is a writer, director, producer, and her amazing narrative film, which she just directed, The Disappearance of Mrs. Wu, was a featured film at our Bentonville Film Festival. So I'm so glad Anna was able to join us again. And then I would love to introduce Nancy Utley, who is the former chair of Searchlight Films. And may I just say these films: Shape of Water, Nomadland, 12 Years a Slave, Birdman, Slumdog Millionaire, along with 122 Golden Globe Awards. So esteemed. Thank you so much for joining us. So first of all, I just want to give you all a chance to just talk about what you've just heard and what you've seen from the research, and then I will get into specific questions for you. But I just wanted to give you a chance to any of you to make a comment about the study before we jump in.
Oh, well, I'll just say, I find it very helpful in the specificity, because when we look at scripts or projects to, consider being part of, just having these specific things about, not only representation, but the kind of representation. So I like that I can look for these flags of how people are portrayed, and that it got specific in terms of economics, fitness, these different things that you can sort of keep in your mind and just jog yourself to look for those stereotypes and not reinforce them.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was interesting, all those stats. None of them are particularly surprising, but the idea that 25% of the characters are over the age of 50 and that most of them are white men is just a really key issue when you're trying to deal with just the regular, just representing life as it is. And also just all the just different subject matters pointed out how in a way we become so limited after the age of 50, any character, any human being, and how that has to change for sure.
Yeah, I would also agree with Lisa and Nancy. There's really nothing surprising there, but when you put it in the numbers and the percentages, it is still pretty surprised. And I've been doing this. I've been making movies for the last 20 years. It actually, looking at those numbers, it is a little bit shocking.
Absolutely. And so, Lisa, I'm going to start with you. You had a great quote, which I love to share. It said, when you get to older women being seen on screen, we get so diminished, especially when the woman is not the male gatekeeper's version of what is sexy. Can you talk a little bit about that? It's one of the things that Gina always jokes. She's like, if you ever see me being like the comatose wife of Clint Eastwood or something. I've run out of money. I mean, she always makes a joke of it, but can you just tell us what you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I often say female characters in a lot of the first drafts I've worked with, they're ornamental. They're like literally a decoration in the scene, as opposed to having any agency or any reason to be there other than the male character needs a wife, the male character needs a lover, the male character needs an affair. Or even when you get down to sometimes there's the sexism of the female character serving the male character, but particularly when you get into older characters, I often find that the women just don't have the agency and haven't for a long time that the men have. And I just think we all of us, men, women, read that as fake. We know that that's a thinness and a falseness. It's just we've gotten so used to it, weirdly, in media, that it doesn't flag for people as much as I think it should. So that's why it's so important, the Institute, what you guys are doing, because when you bring up, as Nancy pointed out, the specificity of it all, then it really helps me go forward as a producer and bring it up in a meeting and bring up, do you sort of understand? I'm constantly in meetings where I'm saying, so what is the purpose of this female character? And I'll often have actresses, I love it when they say, I had a wonderful, lovely, amazing veteran actress say about a draft that I was trying to get changes on. She said, if you take my character out, nothing in the story actually changes. And I think that's just a great way to start when you read these. Just say, does she really change the story, or is she more decorative?
Exactly. And actually, that's something that we use as one of our tests, is who is showing up, how are they showing up? If the removal of that character, what does that have meaning? So that's definitely one of the things we use in one of our tests when we do our script analysis. So, Nancy, when you look at the amazing portfolio of films that you shepherded, I mean, at Searchlight, you never shied away from having not only diversity, but a full range of actors, in your movies, and many who were, 50 plus. Can you walk us through what was their pushback? Did you have to fight for it? Or was it just, this is our ethos, this is what we do at Searchlight, and there weren't any issues?
Well, I'll take some credit for those choices, and I'm proud of them. But I will say it's traditionally easier in independent film to get things done the way you want them to get done, because the stakes, the budget is not as high. So, yes, that's good, but it should apply to more than low budget films. So, but I did, like when No Man Land came across our desk, for instance, as a screenplay, just seeing a woman my age who gives 0 Fs and it doesn't wear makeup and is, part of a community and is living her life. It was just, and then to find out it's Frances McDormand is even better. But, there was no resistance to making those projects, or, some of the other ones we did. But I think it's easier to do those things either in lower budget films or documentaries where, it's just easier to get the yeses and you don't get as much pushback. So we need to apply that to the industry as a whole.
And I want to follow up on that. And this can be for any of you. I was putting my thinking about, foreign sales agents and how they tend to be the most negative. When you think about these films traveling and being sold overseas, is it the US that's just hung up on this age thing? Is it easier to distribute and sell these films in the international market? What did you experience? What are you experiencing? And I would love to just start with Lisa and Nancy, and then Anna, I would love you to chime in, because I know you're having some challenges with the disappearance of Mrs. Wu, but I'd love for you to just talk to us about, is the age thing just a US thing? Is it an international thing?
I guess we're starting with us, yeah. I'll just jump into by saying, I think that it is different in the US than in areas of Europe. I certainly experience in the portrayals of women, for example, in France and some of Western Europe as being much more sexualized and able to have a full romantic sexual life over the age of 50, because guess what people do? And I think that's more of the part of that culture. We have, sort of run as a patriarch for so long that I think that that's really the impact that goes all the way into our media. I do think the foreign financing has changed in that now, because of streaming, things are being released in such a different way, and they become, in a way, they can become more global faster than they used to have to be when it was individual theatrical screening of territories. But it is still backwards in that the judgment is still based on, we would see if foreign financing will often benefit a male-driven story, or a story, and a male over 50 is treated very differently than a female over 50 in terms of the financing. And I think that as an industry has to change as a whole, and I think streaming is helping a bit with that.
Yeah, I think the international financing area is one of the last to be coming around to modernity, and there are those traditional things that are just thrown in your face about movies like this don't work, movies with women over 50 don't work, movies with Black people don't work, movies about sports don't work. It's like, okay, it's just not always true, and you have to, things become true because you manifest them to be true. So if you try to push something through because it's excellent, and especially if it can get some kind of awards recognition, some reason for people to see it, you can push through those barriers, but they are still there.
So Anna, I want to spend some time talking about the disappearance of Mrs. Wu. Clearly, you've been making films for 20 years. This is not your first rodeo. We were so thrilled to have the film at Bentonville. It was our opener. We awarded the See It Be It award to the amazing Lisa Liu. But can you talk to us about the experience, about making the film, and also just share with us the challenges that you're having now in getting the film distributed. And of course, we're all about shameless promotion. So if any of you can help Anna, post it in the chat. But yeah, can you just walk us through the whole experience for you and the challenges that you're facing?
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for inviting me to be on this panel first. For me, I am from China, so I was born and raised in a country that women are, we don't, there's no even such thing as a voting right or position, because Confucius believes we only follow. Literally, Confucius says, before you get married, you follow your father. After you're married, follow your husband. After your husband dies, you follow your son. So that's kind of a cultural background I grew up from. And so after I came to this country, I do see, from my perspective, right? And since I didn't grow up here, so there's a lot of maybe culture issues. I don't see it as much as people who are in this country. So I do see movie like Thelma and Louise, and I thought, oh, this is great. Hollywood make those kind of movies, a female-driven and a strong character. So for me, that's kind of something really inspires me. And after I graduated from UCLA Film School, my first job I was working on Joy Luck Club as a director's assistant, and we all know that story has 4 mothers, so 4 mothers and 4 daughters. Therefore, I thought it's great, older woman can be hired. Lisa Liu at that time, it was already 65, and she was hired, and along with the other 3 wonderful older ladies, and so therefore, it really didn't dawn on me there's, sexist or ageist in the industry. And I just started making my own movies. Naturally, because I'm a woman and a woman of color, I write characters that I know. Therefore, most of them, actually all of my movies are woman, and starting from the first one, Blindness, it's Lisa Liu in the lead. And she was already 70, and then onto The Disappearance of Mrs. Wu. She was 92 when she acted in my movie, but I wrote the part for her. She's kind of a disabled, she couldn't walk, so I wrote her, she's on, sitting on a wheelchair, and she's 92, so I wrote her as a grandma. But it is her story, it's in the title, The Disappearance of Mrs. Wu, right? She played Mrs. Wu, but she still has this energy, this curiosity and mission. She doesn't think herself as an old person or old actor, and so for me, making those kind of movies, writing those kind of characters is very satisfying, and I love it. However, it's not easy to get it made, because people, like Lisa and Nancy was saying earlier, people do say, when I go out to raise money, it's like, okay, yes, she is a star, but who would want to go see a movie that is, lead by a 92-year-old? And so I was lucky enough, I was able to raise some money, and but right now, as I'm trying to take the movie out, since I just made it, I am facing the obstacles of, first of all, is Asian, it's a Chinese family story, so people of color, and the lead is a 94 years old. Right now she's 94, and we don't have a big directors, we don't have big producers, and we don't have big quote unquote stars. So it is kind of hard, because they, whether it is, I've been told there's an algorithm that they try to see if you can check those boxes, and I just thought, okay, sure. Then if there's boxes to be checked, then I will do my best to see if I can meet those boxes. But still, it is difficult when you are dealing with a story that is, a woman, and woman of color, and how would the market, because they only look at, when whoever is going to buy it or distributing it, they only look at the market. They somehow think the market will not like those kind of stories. So your research, the funding, it makes me believe otherwise, because I do believe there is audience who want to see different kind of movies and the different representations. So I hope somebody in the audience will love to see the movie. And like you said, I will promote this however I can.
And I would love to see your movie.
Yes, so absolutely, we'll make sure of that. And the thing, I do think it's unfair, because it's, yes, we have a lead who's in her spry 90s, but it's really an ensemble. And you do have a wide range of cast, ranging from the daughter to the grandchildren who are, Gen Z. So I do think that's a very unfair, judgment, of the film. But we'll come back to you on that. So I want to now talk more specifics about, what our esteemed panelists are doing in terms of, changing the lens, changing the game. And Lisa, I want to start with you. Can you talk to us about American Refugee, and also, working with, Blumhouse? Was it so intentional on your part to have such, a diverse and intersectional cast? And were there any challenges to getting the project made?
Yes, so prior to American Refugee, I was brought into Blumhouse. I had never worked with them before, to creatively oversee a series of individual feature films that were being released as a series on Amazon. So that series is called Welcome to the Blumhouse, but the mandate of it, so it's an anthology series. Each film is standalone, feature length. And the mandate of it, in a great way, was that all the filmmakers would be diverse. So that included women, LGBTQ, people of color, And one of the films of those 8, actually a few of them had much older cast, but we had one that was set all in, they're all psychological thrillers, but one that was set in a rest home. And Barbara Hershey was playing a woman who had suffered a stroke and would put herself in there. And of course, what was really fun about that is we got to bring all these older actors in to just have a blast and be empowered in a way and be very opinionated. I can't give the story away, but because of their own powers. And that was just a lot of fun. And they all talked about it, you know, in between takes about how the kind of things they get offered now are so, they're very much like your study, to be honest. It's very much like, you know, you're the punchline. You're there to be the old, annoying, drooling character, as absurd as it is. And it's really, really fun for, I think, as filmmakers, as producers, as creators, and for any of the writers out there, to start to think about what about if your story, if you pushed everybody to an older age and not always writing for the young characters that would naturally have that kind of agency. American Refugee was something I brought to Blumhouse, and it was a Nichols Fellowship winner. And we hired this amazing director, Ollie Leroy, and the whole thing is set in, it's basically a very, I would say, educated, urbane Black family moves rural to sort of save their marriage. And they find that their neighbors, as there's an economic collapse, they find that their neighbors have a bunker and have been building for the end of the world, and they have to sort of ingratiate themselves in there to survive. And what you find out is, of course, what's potentially the two of those families coming together, there's more danger than maybe in the outside world. And it was really fun to do because it's a very short shoot and it's made for Epix, and it's a lower budget, but because there's an embracing of pushing out themes and pushing out messages and trying to talk about modern day politics and conflict with people, you know, we got to just be in a world that felt realer than you might have if you're really just pushing for a psychological thriller. So that was just a lot of fun. And I think that when you start to look at the information that you guys are giving as an institute, and we start to approach our stories, even myself, with a more forensic eye, and we are able to use your information to then appeal to studios, to funders, to a distributor, because a lot of people aren't even thinking about this at all, and they will do exactly what Anna said or Nancy said. They're in a way, I like what Nancy said, it's sort of giving oxygen when you have foreign distributors and foreign funders and domestic funders giving oxygen to these old tropes and these old ideas. And that's what I think we need to keep breaking down, because the stories, we have so much opportunity now in distribution because of streaming, right? They don't have to be big box office. It isn't built on an opening weekend anymore. So you can have the shows that now represent, you know, older people, Veep and Gracie and Frankie and Big Little Lies and How to Get Away with Murder. And there's endless ones now, I think, that really track well and are doing really well box office and commercially. And I think we have to lean into that as we pursue future projects.
Thank you for that insight. And Nancy, I want to jump over to you. So to quote Britney Spears, oops, I've done it again. Tell us about Lake Ellen Entertainment. First of all, you don't need to do anything but sit on a beach and drink pina coladas at the Coronado Film Festival. Why did you decide to start another company? And what are the mechanics? What is the business model? Like, what are you thinking about in terms of taste and what you're looking for to develop? Tell us everything that you can tell us.
Well, I retired from Searchlight last spring and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought I've been working consistently since college without any sort of break. And I thought, you know, let's just take a moment here. And I got really tired of being part of a big company and going to the Monday morning box office meeting and the Wednesday and the Tuesday lunch, and everything was just the same all the time. And I thought, just can't do this anymore. So I spent the summer doing the pina colada thing, which was great. I mean, I have to say, people thought I would get bored, and I was not bored at all. There's so many things you can do, but I was approached by Peter Chernin and Chernin Entertainment about doing a production deal funded by them and Netflix. So I have a first look with Chernin Entertainment, and then they have a first look with Netflix. And I also have 3 puts a year at Netflix. And anybody who doesn't know what put means, I can make anything I want below a certain budget level, which in this case is 35 million. So I've hired 2 young women to help me out, and we're looking for things. The things I'm interested in, really any great quality original project, but I'm interested in the kinds of movies we made at Searchlight in terms of being distinctive, auteur, awardsy, you know, I like that area. I feel like I know it. I'm interested in underrepresented stories, including women over 50. I miss Nancy Meyers movies. Like, I know people would criticize those movies because they're too white and they're too rich, but at least they were, for, you know, at least I saw myself on screen. And I'm kind of haunted by some movies at Searchlight we didn't get to do, like The Farewell is a movie I just love and think about all the time. So I'd love to be a person aiding people telling stories. And I also am interested in kind of elevated rom-coms because I think they do well on streaming and they've been out of the market for a long time. I guess when I was approached about it, I was really torn, and I'm still kind of torn about, do I want to work that hard again, or do I want to just, you know, go sit at my brother's lake house and look at the sunset? But I feel like if I'm given the opportunity to be able to help people tell their stories, why wouldn't I keep doing that for a little while longer and see what else? And also I'm curious to see what this side of the desk is like. And it's harder because when you're at a big company, people just bring you things and you're like, yes, no, maybe. And here I'm having to hustle and find things. So it's a little different.
And then are you thinking about films, or are you thinking about series as well?
Both. My whole career has been in films, but what I really like to watch is limited series because I like the idea that they're usually only an hour, so that seems more doable, but I like the stacking of them so that if you want to, you can keep going with the story. So I'd love to get into that area, or series.
And so then would it be, say, Netflix that decides, yes, we want it, and yes, we're going to do a day and date, or we're just going to go theatrical first and then our platform? Is that in your control? Or once, if they're like, yeah, we want it, you know, how far does your, I guess, arms and tentacles reach into the whole process? Do you know that yet?
That's a little bit to be determined, I guess, but the first look means if Chernin doesn't want to do something, I can take it elsewhere. And if Chernin wants to do it, but Netflix doesn't want to do it, we can take it elsewhere. So that gives me some leeway there. As far as how it's distributed, I think from my conversations with Netflix folks, they understand why I'm here, why I'm with them, and that if I bring in a project that really needs a theatrical release, I believe that would be taken seriously.
Well, it's fantastic. And I'm so glad that you put the pina colada aside for a few minutes, because we definitely need you and you know, your purview and what you're bringing to the market. And so, Anna, I want to go back to you, and then we're going to open up. We've got a lot of questions. Is how can we help you? Like, what is it that you need? And if there's anybody, you know, who's watching, who can help you move forward with Mrs. Wu or something else, like, what is it that you need kind of right now? What kind of support are you looking for?
Okay. First of all, what I think about age, you know, we've been talking about women over 50, and also the research shows what kind of character they are. And I actually, when I think of women over 50, when I do my own writing, I don't really think about age. I just think who they are. if they're a mother, and if the story is about mother-daughter stories, then I think about them as a mother. If they're a professional career woman, or if they're artist, whatever it is. And to me, I think age is almost irrelevant in my story, in my thinking. And I'm hoping the industry, entertainment industry, will think that way too. Instead, because there's a, because if we always think of age as people getting old, and then when you get old, you're not vibrant anymore, you're not funny anymore, you're not sexy anymore. That is something I think is very misleading, because everybody is different, man and woman all included. Some people could be in their 80s still absolutely like a young person, and somebody in their 40s could be already like an old person, right? So for me, as a creative person, I write and I direct, I only think about my story. What is the most interesting for my story? Whether it's old or young, it doesn't really matter. And I will create that character. If it's over age 50, I will still look at her or him with that kind of glasses. That basically, this is an interesting character, whether it's action or comedy or drama, it doesn't matter. So with that being said, I would love, I'm so glad that Nancy and Lisa are here. I would love to get support actually from producers and executives like Lisa and Nancy regarding things, because I do independent films, right? Nancy talked about it. It's in independent films, we do have a little bit more control on what we want to create, but at the same time, after we create it, we face the difficulty of taking out. So therefore, the representation actually, it might be more in the independent world, but if you don't get to see, sort of like a, Gina's Institute is, if she can see it, she can be it. But if my project or other independent filmmakers' project couldn't get in front of an audience, therefore they won't be able to see it, and they won't be able to be it. So I would love to, whether Disappearance of Mrs. Wu, and my next project is another actually action movie of a woman warriors of young family, it's 3-generation grandma, daughter, and granddaughter fighting in the war because their husband had been killed in the war. So this is woman warrior, and again, it's Chinese, and I'm going to be fighting uphill battle again. So I would love to get anybody's support here as possible. And thank you so much.
Absolutely. Well, I have a feeling some good things are going to happen after this event. So we've been getting a flurry of questions. So I want to bring on Lisa Emery, our director of social media, who has been curating those questions. Lisa, what do you got?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much to obviously our lovely speakers and everybody in the chat. We've had such a lovely discussion going on about people and how excited they are by the conversation that we're hosting here today and what everyone has been saying. So yeah, let's get into some of these questions. This one comes from Julia. They say, how can we consumers alert producers, writers, directors to believe that there is an audience out there for productions which feature older women in a meaningful light? So this is for anyone.
Well, I'll jump in and just say, I think one example is that there are a number of shows that are tracking into second, third seasons with older women. I mean, Gracie and Frankie is a classic. It's like, I mean, there's actually quite a lot now where women have not just over the age of 50, just as representation, they also have agency and power. And I think you could build those stats when you go in to try to push for another show, because I think that Netflix, Amazon, Epix, all those streaming services are tracking that. So I actually think the door is opening. We just have to kick it a little bit.
I agree with that, because even though we've seen the terrible stats, when we went to poll examples of what is on the air that's working. There's pages and pages and pages of them now. It isn't just Thelma and Louise out there on their own. So I would definitely use those as a hammer to hammer home the idea that it can work. These projects can work and be successful.
Yeah, well, I can't speak for anybody else, but for myself as a creator, writer, director, I will always, I give you my promise, I will always write my project with as many different people and different age as possible.
Love that. Love what everybody said, especially love somebody actually commented, the door is opening. We just have to kick it open a little bit is a really great quote. So thank you for that. So moving on to Wendy wants to know, since the market has been skewed for almost a century, countering the assertions that films won't succeed unless they follow the status quo seems to be the greatest challenge. How do you counter the gatekeepers who want to maintain a system that has not only made them money, but furthered their social agenda?
Kind of the same question, right?
I think this one asks more about like the people who are keeping the stories out, whereas the first one was what can consumers do? But I think it is sort of a similar answer that you all gave, is just as the consumers continuing to show that we do want to see these things, and that's how we can kind of push against the gatekeepers.
And it's obviously important to change who the gatekeepers are over time, right? So I think a lot of people are working on that, but for a long time it was just white males, in the vast majority being the gatekeepers at all levels, right? Like agents, managers, studio executives, like distributors, theater owners, and that is changing over time.
Yeah, and don't underestimate social media as a consumer and what you're putting out there and what you're saying, because then that ripples, because you always have other people join that conversation, and all of the distributors and streamers are definitely tracking that. So that's one place of empowerment, I think.
Very true.
Yeah, absolutely. And as the social media person for the Institute, I can definitely attest to that, which I also, if you scroll up, everyone in the chat, I did include all of our wonderful speakers' handles. So please go and follow them and all their projects and support them that way, and also the Institute. So I think Michelle has joined us, which is great. We had a question about our research, which is it possible that the findings, or Madeline can answer this one, is it possible that the findings in your research can be sent to all the unions, networks, and production houses? Knowledge is power, and I believe a spotlight needs to shine on these findings as it is crucial in moving forward and fighting ageism.
So in terms of what do we do now that we have the research, the research is our currency. It's how we engage, educate, and engage our cohorts, which of course not only include all the major media entertainment companies, but it does include, the guilds, the unions. We regularly work with, SAG-AFTRA, we work with the DGA, the PGA, and that's why it will take us a year to do at least one cycle where we can take this study directly to, our cohorts. So that's where the real work gets done. Is after, and of course, Michelle did a wonderful presentation, but now it's like making those calls and setting up those presentations over and over again, and then tracking to see if, we were able to push the needle, which we have with our other projects, but really on the age 50 plus, we really want to lean into that.
Absolutely. This one comes from our Instagram, actually. We have from Ariella. She wants to know if we know what the effects have had on like younger boys and men, and if they're seeing this and how what their reaction is to that. I think that might be best for Michelle, if we have anything on that.
I don't have literature right in front of me on the effects of boys and men, but we do know more broadly that reinforcement of gender norms in media do contribute to to acceptance of those norms and limitations for what people can see for themselves. And so when we talk, for example, in the recommendations, we talked about being mindful of how people talk about age, even when people over certain ages aren't present. A lot of that has to do with how we frame age, or any form of marginalization, but how we frame age when we just have cultural discussions, or when we talk to one another. That doesn't just affect people who are older, it does also affect people who are younger as well. So while I can't, without looking in more depth into the research itself, which I'm sure exists, I don't want to present like, oh, I know for sure that it does XYZ for younger boys and men, but we do know that it contributes to the valorization of strength over empathy as what's seen as like a valuable asset. And we do know that it contributes to seeing any feminine qualities as weakness, and masculine qualities as strength and success. And I think that's reflected as well in what we see with the types of jobs that are portrayed on screen for characters over certain ages. Success is allowed to continue when you fit into a very small box.
Thank you, Michelle. And Lisa, I believe we have time for one more question before we wrap.
Yeah, absolutely. So this one comes from CK. They say, as a writer over 50, I have not had a lot of luck getting in the door with stories about women first off, and then women of a certain age. Are you seeing the attitude towards older writers who are the ones writing these stories with more authenticity? And are you seeing that attitude change?
I hope so. I don't know. I don't have a handle on that for the whole industry, actually. I always welcome getting those scripts. I feel like there's not enough of them in the pipeline. I don't know at what point they're being stopped, or if they are not being written enough. But I would love to see more scripts with written by older women and about older women. And again, I think that's slowly changing over time.
Yeah, I would just add, for any writer-directors, men or women that I have worked with over the age of 50 or right in that range, I think there's just a lot more natural layering of what a character is when they're not 22, right? There's just a natural layering because that person's coming from the perspective of just having more life experience and relating to how it actually feels, and all the different, I would say, colors in that wheel. And that is just really, really enriching, because you sort of end up not having to do as many rewrites or layering in there because someone's coming to the story with so much life experience. So I'm encouraged that hopefully gatekeepers will hire older and older writers, because you gain a lot from that, I think.
Yeah, and from my personal experience also, because as a writer, I do get hired to write. Personally, I think if the story is good, and it doesn't really matter if your subject is older female or LGBTQ or older male, even for that matter, or the writer is over 50, it might not get made. I actually have script being, optioned and, hired to write, but they haven't got made. But that's different. And, as a writer, to answer that question, I do think, actually Nancy said earlier that things are, and then Lisa said too, the door is open. Right now, I think it's how we're going to keep it open and open wider. And we can't say the industry hasn't changed. It has to be. And it's just, we want to change faster, quicker, and the door open wider to include all the underrepresented voices, and whether it's LGBTQ or whether it's women or people of color. So So I think as a writer, I am very encouraged that I do get to ask to write stories or script that's woman and people of color or you know, older generation. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. We want to thank again Next 50, for which today, the study, this event would not happen. We want to thank the Coronado International Film Festival for being such a wonderful partner. We want to thank, you know, Anna and Lisa and Nancy. As Lisa mentioned, our Lisa mentioned, please follow their handles. And the study will be on our website later today. And I want to just thank all of you for giving us an hour of your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And thanks, Joe and Ashley, as well. Bye, everybody.